So a little earlier this morning, Packers president and CEO Mark Murphy put out a monthly column he puts out called MT5, where he basically breaks down 5 different topics surrounding the Packers. And this morning he put it out, and there were a few different interesting things I want to take note of. He talks about Jordan Love, basically how he's assessing Love so far in this team. The fan asks, you said in prior time that it could take maybe 8 games to assess Jordan Love in his future. It's basically been about that time. What do you think? He gives his answer. He also talks about the Rasul Douglas trade, which I'll get into, and he starts off with the basic assessment of this Packers team. So I'm going to get into all of this. If you guys are new here, I put out Packers content most days, oftentimes. And if you want all that kind of stuff, Packers news, updates, all that kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe and turn on the post notifications so you never miss any kind of Packers content. So we'll start off here, and this is posted on Packers.com, which is where I got these quotes. He says this: the Packers opened the season in impressive fashion with the road win over the Bears. Since then, we have not matched that performance. We knew that transitioning from Aaron Rodgers would be challenging, but our performance as a team has been disappointing. I have confidence in Matt LaFleur, though, and believe that he will make the necessary adjustments to allow us to improve as we go forward. I also think we have a talented team, albeit young, and that we will see our players start to make plays and gain confidence as the season goes on. I'm encouraged that, although we haven't always played well, our players have continued to play hard. I've also been pleased with the leadership that many of our veterans have shown during this challenging process. It's a long season and things can change quickly in the NFL. Over the next 10 games, the most important thing is to show improvement, gain confidence as a team, and learn how to win close games. So I think right now, assessing the Packers, he gives a pretty honest assessment. We're not playing very well. We started off really well. Things haven't been going well. It's a very young team. And I think most Packers fans, the discussion right now is obviously looking ahead to the future, trying to see if this team we have here, quarterback, coach, the entire situation, if everything is in place to build a successful Packers team that we saw for years and years with Aaron Rodgers. Of course, going into the season, the biggest question is Jordan Love, and that is going to continue to be the biggest question until the Packers start to have success. And also at this time, there's lots of people questioning Matt LaFleur. Should he continue to be the head coach? And here's sort of what I've been thinking right now when you look at Matt LaFleur, when you look at the Packers team, Jordan Love. I was thinking about this a little earlier today on a walk, that the Packers front office, I believe, is going to be very patient. You have lots of other teams and organizations that may be a little less patient. You look at the Raiders, who fired Josh McDaniels, a season and a half, maybe even less than that, into his time with the Raiders, having their owner making those decisions quickly. The Packers don't have an owner. I think they're willing to be more patient. And I do think Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy knew that there was a possibility that the season could look like this. I think there was hope among probably them, also all of us Packers fans, that things could come together more quickly and not take as much time. You would hope that the young talent could figure it out. But so far, that really hasn't been the case. But when I look at next season, I honestly still think there's a very high chance that both Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love are back next season. I was thinking about it percentage-wise. In my mind, I honestly think there's like an 80 to 90% chance that LaFleur and Jordan Love, both of them are here next year. I think Brian Gutekunst invested so much into Jordan Love, making a decision at the time that wasn't very popular with Rodgers on the team with a very competitive roster. He decides to build for the future when the Packers maybe could have used some more players at the time. And I think he's going to give Jordan Love more than one season. Now, I do think there's still maybe a 10-20% chance that if things do not improve for the rest of the season, there is a chance that Gutekunst, decides to move on from maybe both of those guys. I do think, though, it's very unlikely in my opinion, but we'll have to see. And if they do improve, as Murphy says he hopes they do, I'm pretty much certain that both of the guys are here. I don't think the Packers are going to move too quickly, and they're going to give these guys time to, try to figure things out. And now we go on here to what he had to say about Jordan and Love. So here's the question. It says, what are your thoughts on Jordan Love? I know you said that it would take at least 8 games to determine if he is our quarterback of the future. Is he our quarterback of the future? And Mark Murphy is typically pretty honest in his assessments, because I know when you hear from GMs, you sort of have to keep in mind that they're probably not going to share every little thing. GMs or presidents are probably not going to share every detail, everything they're thinking. But more often than not, in my mind, Mark Murphy seems to be pretty honest. So here's what he says. That's the $1 million question, Jim. So I guess Jim is the guy who asked the question. As a person, Jordan is everything you would want in a player. Hard worker, smart, humble, a leader who is respected by his teammates. He is also willing to take the blame when things don't go well. His play has been up and down, though. Young players often take time to find consistency, but we still very much believe in Jordan and are excited to see his continued development. So, saying they still believe. In 2008, after 8 games, we had seen enough of Aaron Rodgers to sign him to a contract extension. Aaron was in a much different situation, though, as we had good veteran receivers in Donald Driver and Greg Jennings, a quality left tackle in Chad Clifton, and a good running game with Ryan Grant. Jordan, meanwhile, is facing a much different situation with young receivers and tight ends, no David Bakhtiari, and a struggling run game. It wouldn't be fair to judge Jordan now since there are so many other factors that have contributed to the offense's poor performance, e.g. dropped passes, penalties, mental errors. We should have a much better sense regarding Jordan at the end of the season. In the NFL, quarterback is the most important position, but also the hardest position to play. So Murphy's still saying they believe in Jordan Love, which I don't think they would say anything else, even if they were slightly concerned, just because when he is your guy, you're going to give him time. You're not going to publicly say you don't believe. But it sounds like they still are believing in Jordan and what he can be. And he does make a good point, which if you watched my Brett Favre video the other day, it's similar to what Brett Favre was saying. And I sort of went into depth and showed the stats from Rodgers and his receivers in his first year. The fact that, Greg Jennings was in his third season, had just come off a 920-yard receiving season. Donald Driver was entering his 10th season, and he had just had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. So there's no doubt that Rodgers was in a better situation when it came to talent around him. And with Love, with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, some of these other guys, they're it's very young and inexperienced. No really veterans here in the receiving room, which I think has hurt Jordan. And so I am curious to see, how much Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst are, thinking that it's Jordan Love's fault, thinking that it's the team's fault. And clearly here, as Murphy says, he says it wouldn't be fair to judge him now because there's so many other factors. And really what the question that comes into my mind is once we get to the end of the season and they have the same situation around Jordan Love, the same players, same young players, same offensive line who struggled run blocking, a running game that hasn't gotten going. If this all continues, will they think it's, on Jordan Love? Will they be confident and say, well, if we can in the offseason, maybe sign a veteran receiver, maybe trade for a veteran receiver, maybe add a couple offensive linemen, free agents who they think could maybe contribute to a more successful run game? Would they give Jordan Love one more season to see, with a little bit more help, could the Packers find success with Jordan Love? And I would not be shocked, as I already said, for Jordan Love to be back. Even if these issues continue, obviously if you're the front office, you hope that you see that improvement because that does give you more confidence going into Jordan Love's second season, running the team as the starting quarterback. But if it does continue, let's say we get to the end of the season and what we've seen these past few games is happening when the season ends, at that point the Packers do have a big decision to make because I think they want to be patient. They want to see Jordan Love again, I believe. And then you sort of have the question of, okay, do you move on from Jordan Love or do you try to bolster everything around him because you still believe in what he can be? And so I think heading into next year's draft, that's going to be a big topic of discussion as we progress through the season. Is Jordan Love the guy? And if the Packers had a top 5 pick, they're seemingly from all the scouts out there, the draft experts, this is a very good quarterback class, but oftentimes you look at some of these top quarterback classes, so many guys don't end up being what everyone thought they would be. Guys like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. So I'm not sold just because you have a top 5 pick, you're going to hit on your quarterback. There's still a chance that the next guy isn't bad as well. But here's one thing I was thinking. Feel free to let me know what you think about this. It's more so draft related, but with Jordan Love, I think if you're the Packers, and let's say you get to the end of the season and you're like 50% confident in Jordan Love, you see that it's a bad situation, but you still have 50% confidence. Would you draft a quarterback early? And I think that if you do have a top 5 pick, I was contemplating this in my mind. Do you just draft a quarterback and give Jordan Love another season? Because here's the thing. There's no doubt quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. Sure, some teams can get by with really solid teams if they're like stacked everywhere else. A team like the 49ers, even though they have struggled recently, you can get away with maybe a slightly less talented player if you have an elite defense, if you have very, very good weapons. But most teams in the NFL, you need a solid elite caliber quarterback to compete in the NFL, to win Super Bowls, win playoff games. And because quarterback is the most important position in the NFL, would it be crazy for the Packers to draft a quarterback in the top 5 but still give Jordan Love another season? And I know that you would say, well, why wouldn't you draft a guy to help Jordan Love? And I get that. I definitely do. And there's definitely pros and cons to every different strategy. It's not like one thing is perfect, one thing is terrible. I think there's, positive outcomes could come from either situation. Let's say you did use a top 5 pick on a QB and then you give Jordan Love another season, maybe even half the season. And then if you recognize, okay, we got Jordan Love some more weapons, which I hope they do in the offseason, we maybe bolster the offensive line a little bit, and let's say 10 weeks in, we see the same things from Jordan Love, maybe some inconsistency, maybe some inaccuracy. At that point, you do have a top 5 pick on the roster that you could throw in there and sort of hedge your bet in a sense. And while in the short term, you would rather be able to get another player to pair with Love and hope that he's successful. And if, that did work out, that's probably the best case scenario. But if you did use a top pick and it still doesn't lead to the offense being successful, then you're sort of stuck. And so maybe the Packers decide to do that. I think it's less likely, but maybe if nothing improves, that could be a possibility, even though it may sound somewhat out there. But also, let's say the Packers were 80% confident in Jordan Love. I still wouldn't be shocked to see them draft a second-round quarterback, third-round quarterback, because going into Aaron Rodgers' season, his first year starting, they used second-round pick and seventh-round pick on quarterback. So if they're uncertain about Jordan Love after this season, they could do the same thing. And so we really won't have a full idea of the Packers' future until the end of the season, when we'll have a much better idea of where this team stands, because if they can take some big strides forward, if this offense can get going and they can see that improvement, as Mark Murphy said, they're obviously going to be much more confident in Jordan Love, and I think there's a much greater chance that Love stays around as as next year comes. But it does get pretty complicated and much more uncertain if this offense doesn't take some strides forward, because there's definitely going to be people calling for a new quarterback. I've already seen people calling for Sean Clifford to come in and start. I think it's way too early. You have to give Love this season. And I love Sean Clifford. I really enjoy watching him. He does have those shades of Favre where he just runs around and makes crazy throws and seems pretty fearless out there. And maybe, next season, if Love struggles again and he's, they don't draft another quarterback or have anyone else in there, maybe later in the season next year, you try Clifford if that happens. But right now, I think it's too soon. So that's sort of what Murphy had to say on Love. And then here, I'm going to finish it off. He talks about the Rasul Douglas trade. So he says here, we made one trade at the deadline this year, sending Rasul Douglas to Buffalo. Rasul has played well for us, and we weren't looking to trade him. But Buffalo's offer was too good to pass up, and it frees up a substantial amount of cap space for next year. It is also a great opportunity for Rasul to go to a talented team, and for Carrington Valentine to show he is a quality corner. And so with Rasul gone, I was wondering about this, what's the Packers' plan? As I said in the Rasul trade video I made, when you look at the Packers secondary, I do think that's an area where they have a little bit more depth. There is some uncertainty there, but you do have Eric Stokes. He is injured. He's been injured for a while, but he could come back in maybe 3, 4 games, 5 games, depending on when he's fully healthy and ready. If he gets back to his former first-round self from his first season, the Packers are fine at corner. And then you have Carrington Valentine, who he was a hot topic, especially in preseason when the Packers, when he was playing like lights out, and most people, it's a very big topic of conversation. And so I do find it interesting that the one guy that Mark Murphy brings up is Carrington Valentine. He is probably going to be starting now with Rasul Douglas gone, so he's going to have the first start at this. And let's say he comes in, plays really well, even if Eric Stokes is healthy, Carrington could very easily, keep that spot at corner. And I do think it's very, telling with Gutekunst, the moves he's made to trade Rasul Douglas, all offseason, making moves to get rid of the older veteran players, clear out contracts, try to free up salary cap space for the future, and try to allow guys to come in and gain a lot of experience as young players. And so Brian Gutekunst, I think, knew that there could be some growing pains this year, as there have been. And now Carrington Valentine, a young 7th-round draft pick from this season, is going to have an opportunity to grow, and with the more snaps, he's going to grow at a much quicker pace. And so it's clearly here the Packers are hoping that Valentine can maybe grow into that, second outside corner paired with Jair Alexander. So that's pretty much all they had to say. If you want more Packers content, as I said, feel free to subscribe down below. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.